Sakuems here. So this video is going to be a tutorial about a watercolor technique for backgrounds. So I did one I think a year ago, but it was very hectic and very long, and I was still trying out things, but I feel like now I've not mastered the technique because I can still learn a lot doing this, but I feel like I can still, I guess, do an updated version and a little demo to basically show you how I do those things that you see in a lot of my recent artworks, such as this one, which is my pretty artwork. In the background, I kind of did the same technique that I'm going to show you, which is a bunch of water things going on. It's really hard to explain, so that's why I'm making the video, because it's a combination of different techniques, such as actually like working with wet technique, lots of water going on, lots of pigment. You can also use like spraying bottles, salt, like there's a lot of things, but this is a type of background that I do as a base for my artworks, and so I figured it might be interesting to just tell you why and how and everything. So yeah, I hope you find it interesting. So what I'm going to do is just show you a couple of the background that I already did and kind of tell you how I work on top of those. And then I'll explain to you the tools you need to do the same technique. I have a couple here. I don't want to talk too much about all of those. One like this, which is a little bit more like texture, like I used a lot of salt in this one. And then my favorite one is definitely this big one, which has a lot of colors. This is the best, I think, for me to use as a base, because I can explain to you what each technique or tool is doing, because I've used everything on that one. So when I work with watercolors for backgrounds, what I do is I intend to mix about three techniques. The first one is is called wet to wet. Is when you have a wet base and you keep adding colors when your paper is still kind of soaking wet. And to do that, I tend to use like some water brushes like this one, or actual like water brush, this one, and or levy brush, mop brush, any type of very thick brush that can hold water, or any brush that actually has water inside. And this is what it's creating, like those really like flowy, blurry type of background. There's actually also this one that I've used the exact same technique. It was really wet, and I kept just laying colors and moving around, and when it's drying, it kind of diffuses itself. So you have a very blurry look with the wet on wet technique. And so that's the first type of technique that I use when I work with watercolor backgrounds. The second technique I use is spraying or dripping. So I have here a random spray. This is just plain water inside. And what it does is when it's wet, or any type of color really that you have, you can spray water and it will create a mist, and it will basically remove or create dots. So all those paler looking, you see like all those white bits are basically color that's been lifted because of a splash of water that I put on top. You can use a spray if you want a very thin mist everywhere, so you can't really tell, but there's like tiny specks of it. Or you can actually use just a regular like water brush, just take on water and let it drip on the paper. I will show you that in a demo, but that's how I create those like bubbly, splashy look. Those little specks here, and it's kind of hard to tell, but there's like just smear texture, and to do that you actually need water but also salt. And what it does is when you put it on a wet surface with colors, it's going to drink the water next to it, and when you have the salt, it's going to create a darker kind of spot, like kind of speck. And this is what creates also like contouring, kind of like an outline. And so yeah, that's basically like every tool you could use is like spraying, wet on wet technique, salt, and like tissue paper, and also just using actual paintbrush to create or move the colors if you want. Whenever my background is kind of finished, I'll just peel off my paper. You see, this is actually a block, and this is glued on all the sides, and once I'm done with it, I can just peel it off right here. This one isn't done yet, so I'm still keeping it on the board, but when it's done, I peel it off and I use my light box to transfer any type of artwork that I want. For example, I have here an artwork, and what I'm going to do is use my light box, you know, and transfer my artwork. I guess that's just like the basic for this type of technique. The only rule I guess you have to kind of follow is you always leave some whitish space in case you want to work on top. I always have, like, you know, like here is a little bit paler, and on this one I have this whitish spot, but I try to keep it, you know, just slightly open, you know, so I can basically do pretty much any artwork on top. The only thing I have to make sure is I don't overwork the background first, you know, and then I just gradually do it. If you're interested about learning more about this piece, I actually have a long process video with voiceovers, a bit more complex and a bit more in-depth over my Patreon page, so if you want to check it out, it's actually available if you pledge at least $5, and so you'll find out more about the specific artwork. So I have like a bunch of different brushes. I have Lavi brush, watercolor brush, water brush with like water inside, a little pipette so I can mix my own colors. You can also like use some tissue paper to block the colors if you want. It creates texture as well. And of course the last thing you need is actually watercolors, because if you don't have it you can't do anything. And I have a random glass of water just so I can clean my brush and prepare my colors. So the first thing that I did was basically preparing my colors, and I haven't really, I kind of made a mistake, which is adding too much water. So try it out on a piece of paper before, so you have kind of like a watery type of colors, but it has still enough pigment and it's not too watery, because what happened when I was working on the background, as you can tell, is that I ended up with a lot of water, but like a bit too much. I had to use my paper to just remove everything, and then basically I ended up with a very, very pastel look. So it's better to maybe have a little bit more dense colors and then spray the water on top of the paper that you're using, because you can always come on top and still blend it as long as it's still wet. So yeah, just a little tip. And like I said, this type of technique is very versatile, and it's also very like unpredictable, because even knowing how I usually do it, even if I did like, I don't know how many already, maybe like this is my 10th time or something, I still have weird type of reaction because of the water, the pigment. It's never really the same ratio, so I never really get the same results. So I can't really tell you or teach how I do things exactly, because like I said, it's first of all, it's very personal depending on the colors you're using, the tools really, and your personal choices. So I guess I can just give you tips about the process. So first of all, the paper I'm using is a hot press 100% cotton like watercolor paper, and it is my Arteza brand, but you can find any type of paper really for watercolors. The only thing you should make sure of is it's stretched properly. So you either use a paper pad that is glued on all the sides, which is what I'm using, or you can use maybe a like paper stretcher, anything, or even staples, and you staple your paper on a piece of food. You can also use painter's tape. Just make sure that you can still lift the paper so you can move the colors around. And if you don't stretch, since it's using a lot of water, your paper is going to warp so fast that it's going to be impossible to add any more colors. So that's one thing. The second tip is don't be impatient like me. I was so like kind of like in a rush to record a video that I didn't wait for the colors to dry properly. I keep just adding more. I didn't have a hairdryer with me, which is what I usually have with me to blow dry in the different like layers. So try to maybe like do the basic layers and then wait for it to be completely dry before adding more texture, because what happened with me is that basically it was kind of like getting too mixed, and I didn't really have any colors really showing through, and the texture is kind of blunt and like a little bit like blowy. It's not a bad texture, but it's definitely
not what I was going for, which is fine because when it's going to be completely dry, I can just come on top. But yeah, that's like another tip. And then the last tip I could give is about the salt. Be careful when your paper is already too wet or there's too much water and pigment. The salt won't work. It's gonna be a bit too much for the salt to drink, and it might just get stuck on the paper. So I don't have a proper ratio, but when you use salt, try to just not have a lot. It has to be like more of a wet, like, I don't know, not watery. It doesn't have to be watery. You don't have to get actual like water on top. It just needs to be slightly more like wet and borderline, like, you know, you can still have a bit of water moving around, but it's not like soaking wet, like the one I was like working on. And so yeah, and last thing I wanted to mention is, like I said, this is a layering process. So I ended up with like this type of very blurry, grainy looking background, but this is the first step, and I'll definitely make more like, I will definitely add more colors in the process of like making an artwork with this background, and I'll definitely also record myself working on the next step, I suppose. And then yeah, so you'll see that in a future video. But yeah, basically that is it for this tutorial, or like kind of like tips and tricks about watercolor background. This is definitely a complex technique. You never really get the same results every time you're doing it, and so yeah, I'll just hope that you like it. And if you want to try, and if you do try it, I would love to see the outcome. And of course, if you have any question about the process, just post a comment below and tell me, and I'll try my best to reply to you. But I'll definitely maybe make more of those videos where I just like, you know, as my bonus video on like for Wednesdays, I might just record myself doing it, like doing another background or something. And yeah, I guess that will be it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye guys.